Hey everyone, how's it going? Dustin here with Jagged Brush Studios. Back to finish this dock off. Looks like I need to adjust some lighting real quick on my camera. So, give me just a moment. Alright, that looks better, I think. Yeah, much better. So, alrighty. Let's go ahead and get things started here. Gotta get the finishing touches on this dock for an event I have coming up. Not to mention, I just want to be done with it, you know? Because this is the last miniature I have to do for the core set of Marvel Crisis Protocol, which I've been having a ton of fun painting these, so real excited about that. And happy to be almost done with the core set. If you're just joining me, this is where we left off. If you didn't see yesterday's stream, this is where I left off. So we started doing some yellow highlighting right in here and on the boots. We are nowhere near our highest highlight yet, but we base coated everything and got ready to go ahead and get that working. So and we're ready to start working on some more of these yellows, I think. Finish those up and then we'll move on to the greens. So if you're here, I'd love for you to say hi in the chat and let me know. Turned on my headset a little bit because I feel like I'm yelling. The music in my headset is much louder than it is for y'all on your end, I'm pretty sure. Let me know how my levels sound if you're in here. Would be great. So, what we were doing is we were using this Daemonic Yellow and we were highlighting our yellows. So, we're going to go ahead and get back to doing that. I've got my palette cam here and we'll get some of that yellow out on our palette. And grab my fine detail brush, or detail brush. Shouldn't need a whole lot of thinning. Try not to shake my camera. I didn't make it to the hardware store just yet to get the parts to make more and more secure mount, so bear with me as it might shake just a touch. I'm going to try not to though, because I know it makes some people uneasy. I'm going to hit my head on my lamps, apparently. That's going to be a thing again tonight. Get this yellow on there. We're going to finish this guy up tonight, even if I have to stay up pretty late to do so, and we'll do it on stream. So we'll be streaming for a little bit, because it'll probably take me a couple hours to get this guy finished up. And so it doesn't appear that I added any water in my paints intentionally on my palette, because I'm using the wet palette and my paper was pretty wet because I just put it on there. So I was afraid that adding any more water to it would dilute it, and that would have been the case. So I'm glad that was the call I made. If you're new to my streams, glad to have you. Hope you stick around for a little bit. If you're new to my videos, if you're into Star Wars Legion, I have quite a few over there on that topic. I've done One Kingdom Death Monster on stream, and I've done some, they're called dungeon doggies, which are fantasy miniatures for D&D based on different breeds of dogs, and they each have different adventure classes. So there's like a wizard, golden retriever, I don't remember what all of them were, and I don't recall which ones I actually streamed and which ones I just did on my own. So go check them out if you're interested in that. Got this new mat in here today. I'm real happy with it. It was a gift from the guys over at Army Painter. They aren't producing this mat, so this is a unique piece of tool that I have from them. And by unique, I think they sent a few out to a few different streamers that they work with on the regular. So excited to have one. It's huge. Go check out my Facebook page for reference photos of how big they are when compared to my paint desk. It's just massive. Alright, just adding the yellow here on bracers, and of course I ended up connecting a couple of them on accident, so we'll clean that up with some water before it dries. There's these little they're like stripes on the bracers, and they're quite tough to get done in individual lines without having them run together, so it takes a little effort without them looking too terrible. Anyways, how's your evening going? Love to hear from y'all in the chat if you're able to. Love interacting with my viewers. You guys are the motivation that keeps me painting, so let me know in the chat what you're working on. I know some of y'all paint while you watch, and that's awesome. Or maybe you're just watching, who knows. So to bring you up to speed to what we've done yesterday is we completely base coated Doc Ock on this stream yesterday. We started working on the yellow highlights on the lower part of his body yesterday, and we're gonna finish up the yellow highlights and the green highlights today. So as usual, we're working with yellow here, and I absolutely abhor working with that color. It's a difficult color to paint with. I'll let the glove dry a little bit before I go back up to it some more. So we're going to come back and we're going to add just another layer of yellow on some of these areas that we worked on yesterday. Try to get it just a touch brighter. We're actually going to come back a little bit later and add one more shade brighter of yellow on some of these areas, just because I really want some of these areas to pop well. So we're doing this miniature without washes, primarily without washes. We may go ahead and wash the metallics because it just is much easier to shade and highlight that than to try to do metallic highlighting with the metallic paint, since I'm not doing NMM. So we're just doing some spot highlighting here with this yellow while we wait for the other areas to dry. We're gonna leave the soles of his boots yellow. We don't, or it's brown. Wow, it's late. I'm obviously really having a hard time talking tonight, so. But we're gonna leave the soles of his boots brown. It's just an artistic choice that I made. You don't have to. You can paint them yellow if you would like. I am not going to. Another coat of yellow on this glove. Make sure you leave a little bit of brown along your lines. You want to have it where two different areas come together, because it helps to differentiate. So it's going to give you a little bit of shadow there naturally if you leave the brown there. And if you don't, and you accidentally cover up your brown, that's okay. You can come back in later and add some brown to it. If you're just joining us on this stream, thanks for spending your Friday evening with me. I know there's a ton of different things you could be doing. It's awesome that you spent it here with me. And let me know you're in the room so I can give you a shout out, talk with you, ask questions, do whatever you would like, and I'll try to answer them. Do keep in mind that the stream chat is a little bit delayed, so it may take a moment for me to get back with you. Hey Brandon, yep, we just started. And you're not missing a whole lot yet. So you've missed me putting some yellows on some things. I moved my phone so it doesn't vibrate like that again. So you've not missed a whole lot. Glad to see you back. I've adjusted my camera angle a little bit, so I shouldn't be painting off stream as much as last night. Alright, so I think one more coat on these gloves is going to be where I'm at with this color. It's a good idea every once in a while to clean your brushes out, even if you're using the same paint color, because it keeps the paint from drying on the bristles, especially with your smaller brushes, because they don't hold as much paint, so they dry faster. Alright, let's try to get these fingers painted on this other glove without making it look like we finger painted them. See what I did there? I may even have to go to a bit smaller brush here. Let's see, I've got same detail. I think I can use this one. It's got a bit of a finer point on it. Oh, no. Flubbed that up real quick. So, get it wet, pull the paint off. And we'll try that again. This is, some people ask, this is an army painter brush. It's a Wargamer Kolinsky Masterclass brush. I don't think I've used it on stream before, so this is a first. A little shakier than normal tonight, I'm not sure why. So, there'll likely be a few more mistakes than normal. That's okay. We'll touch them up and do what we got to clean them up as we go. I'm not super happy with the way those fingers just turned out. I'm gonna let that dry because I think what's happening is I've gotten it wet to try to clean my brush, and the paint's flowing into places I don't want it to because there's a little bit of water left. So we'll do some other areas. We'll go back and do the slats on this glove again because they're not quite bright enough. Yes, Brandon, there is a difference between the two of these. The Kolinsky it's a smaller, finer point, so I don't know how well you can see the two. So it's quite a bit smaller. The Regiment brush is the white handle on the bottom. The Kolinsky's the top one. This is the Kolinsky and the detail brush, so they're roughly the same size. But the main difference between the two of these brushes is that the Kolinsky Masterclass is made with a natural hair versus a synthetic brush, so they behave differently when you're painting with them. This Kolinsky one tends to keep a finer point, but I do save it for when I need it to be a fine point because I'm rough on brushes. So I go through them rather rapidly. Not intentionally. I am shaking a whole lot today, which is part of the issue with these fingers. Okay, that's a little bit better. I'm still not completely happy with it. Let's try to clean out the groove there. Better. Okay. That's manageable. It's not perfect, but it's manageable. One thing I try to tell people is they're learning to paint is don't focus on the tools at the beginning. Yes, nice brushes are great, and they are a wonderful thing to have, and they do help you in the long run, but focus on technique first, because technique's going to help you more than having tools. tools are fun though. Okay. Time to do his shoulder pads, which are going to be a little bit rough to do. And I wish that there's not going to be a really great angle that's going to help me be able to show you real well what I'm doing. Because of his Doc Ock arms. They're going to get in the way. Sure why I'm still using it. I'm not sure. I got this directly from armypainter.com or from their website, so I don't have any shops in my local area that stock Army Painter products. So you might have to go get them there online. I have not seen them at a couple of the game stores that I've gone to. Like sometimes I'll drive to go to a tournament or something somewhere. And I've not seen them in those stores that do carry the product, so you may be right at having to order them online. They're not super common, but they're made out of a Kolinsky sable, which is the same kind of hair that they use on things like Winsor & Newton brushes. Like I said, I tend to primarily save them for when I need super fine points. Yellow, the amount of yellow on this guy is honestly why I kind of put Doc Ock off till last, because I just hate painting yellow. Even when I did MODOK, he was easier to do with yellow because I could airbrush him, since a bulk of his chair was yellow. Whereas I can't airbrush this guy here. So right now I'm just kind of rebasing all of the area that was brown with yellow for the most part. I'm leaving some browns in some certain spots. But most of it's just getting a complete once over with yellow. And we'll go over it again once it dries. So. Alright, while we wait for some of that yellow to dry, I'm going to go ahead and start working on some of the yellow for a couple other spots. Shake, shake, shake. We're going to... Oh, that's the wrong color yellow. Well, you know what? I changed my mind. We're going to go up to this moon dust yellow. It's pretty bright in comparison to the other one. I think that's that's gonna be our extreme highlight yellow. So get some of that squeezed out here in my palette. And then grab where's my old one out regiment mixer. I have beat this brush to hell and back. And so now it's my mixing brush. So we'll do roughly a 50-50 blend of the moon dust and this Daemonic Yellow. Didn't mean to get that water in there, but oh well. let's go. Let's start with highlighting this belt again. I'm hoping the audio is better tonight. I adjusted some more of my mixers to get the sound better, I hope. So we're going to go over those areas we did yellow, and we're going to do smaller areas of yellow on there. We're really trying to go for some extreme contrast on this guy. So we're going to highlight even fewer areas than our last yellow highlight. And if you remember, this is our third color of yellow that we've used. Great, thanks, Brandon. I turned my voice up some more, hoping that that would be the case. So, from yesterday's stream, we started with a 50-50 mix of the brown and yellow, and then we went to directly the Daemonic Yellow, and then this is now 50-50 mix of moon dust and Daemonic Yellow. And then after this, we'll probably go with the pure moon dust. And I'm really not hitting any of the yellow recesses that we colored yellow last time. So it's going to be primarily just our ridges and stuff. Now there is a small ridge on his boot. It's really easy to miss. It's also really easy to mess up, so be careful with that. And this moon dust is going to cover just a little bit better than your traditional yellow, because it's got a little bit more of the brighter white pigments in there. Not that white covers exceptionally well itself, but it's got more pigment in it, I guess. I don't know, I have better experience with it covering. Bring my highlight around on a couple of on this other boot, I mean. There's where we're at with it. We'll go ahead and do a little bit of highlighting on this side here. Just the outside. We're not going to get the inside like this, because the inside should be fairly well shaded of the boot. And one thing to try to do when you're painting is to remember to pull your highlights up to or push them up to the highest point of highlight that you're going for. So that's going to help if you have little pools of paint left over when you pick up your brush. That's going to help that to focus on that one spot. rinse my brush real quick, and back into our Daemonic Yellow real quick. I'm going to put a second coat on these fingers. Oops. Bump my wet palette out of the way. I think I accidentally over-thinned this yellow much farther than I want it to be. When I came out of my wash container, there was a dab of water on my brush and it fell right into there. So you gotta be careful of that, because that little bastard piece of water, or bit of water, will dilute your paints out. And there's no recovering from it, except adding more paint again. Especially when working with a wet palette, because your paints are already going to want to try to thin out on the wet palette from natural osmosis of the water underneath the palette. And work on these shoulder pads some more. You know what, I want these to be real bright, so I am literally gonna base coat all of it yellow. I was trying to leave some areas brown, wasn't happy with where it was coming out artistically, so we will fix it. The closer we get to his face, the brighter I'm going to want my colors to be, because it's going to naturally draw your eye up to his head, which you want to be the focal point of your miniature. Unless you want something else to be the focal point, then focus on that. But most people want the face of their miniature to kind of be where people look at. But like for some of my Kingdom Death Monster miniatures that I've done, not necessarily on stream, but like the survivors, the initial survivors in that game, the faces aren't super intriguing on the first survivors, so what I end up doing is I put some really bright lanterns and some OSL effects. They have the lanterns already, so I really focused my brightest points on the lantern and wanted them people to look at the lanterns rather than the survivors' faces. You can find pictures of those, what I'm talking about, on my Facebook page. So we're back in our 50-50 mix, and we're doing some quick highlighting here. So there's fingers here. Don't try to do this all in one coat. You're gonna have to do multiple coats of this yellow, I promise. And that's another way that you can use these yellow colors to highlight, is by maybe I'll do one layer on one spot that I want to be less bright, and then other spots will get enough layers to get to the actual opacity that I want it to be. But one thing I've been practicing lately is really pushing my contrast on my miniatures. So for those not familiar with the term contrast, when it comes to miniature painting, that means your highlights and your shadows. And I see a lot of people, myself included for a while, that they're really talented. You could tell they have a lot of talent, but they're not pushing their contrast up as where it should be, and their colors are too flat. So the skill's there. They just need to use darker and brighter colors. So that's part of the reason that I'm going with the no wash technique on this one, is because it's going to force me to really focus on practicing those contrasts that I'm trying to learn. So, and I accidentally just connected one piece to another, so get my old brush out, wet it down, and flood that area. Alright. We're going to do another coat on the upper shoulder pads. They should be dry. You really want to make sure this yellow is completely opaque before you start trying to highlight on it on these upper shoulder pads if you're going to do it the way I'm doing it. Nothing looks as bad as trying to highlight over paint that's partially transparent when it comes to yellow. It just looks muddled. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that looks worse, but okay. Quick update with where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and go into my pure moon dust, and I'm going to thin this out pretty thin, and we're going to do some really small highlights in some of the areas down here. I don't like that. We'll take that off. I don't like how it turned out. I was trying to do an edge highlight right on the bottom where light might catch, but it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. So we'll get it wet and we'll take it off. Alright. Down here on the boots. So these are going to be tiny highlights. They're going to be real small. Just using the tip of my brush. You don't want to overdo this color because you'll end up looking like it's white, is the impression you'll end up getting. And sometimes I'll touch with the side of my brush because it helps it to pick up the edge just a little bit. We're not going to pull this color into the inside at all. We're going to focus on the outside areas. Ridges. So. Sometimes when you're painting these comic miniatures, you may over-exaggerate some of your highlights. So like, I'm going a little bit brighter than I would normally, but like I said, again, we're doing some studies in contrast lately. That had an itch. got it into somewhere I didn't want it to. Starting to look more yellowy to me. I'm not sure what you all are thinking, but sometimes the brighter highlight colors help trick your brain into seeing the other areas as darker. So, for instance, this super bright highlight of moondust makes you perceive the other darker yellow areas as more yellow than they actually are. Some really small highlights on these fingers. I can already see there's a couple areas I need to go back and put some brown in. That's okay. We will make that work. And I didn't quite bring that yellow up as close as I wanted to the other parts. Okay. A lot of me talking on stream is just kind of rambling my thoughts as I have them. So you get to hear what's going on inside my head as I paint. Because, I don't know, I like to talk to myself, I guess. Right. Back to these shoulder pads for a second coat. Well, a third coat, or whatever coat we're actually on here. And I flubbed one over the edge, but that's okay because we haven't done our green highlighting yet, so we'll be able to clean that up in a minute once we get to our green. I think we're at a point to where I can let that dry, and then go ahead and start working on the brighter highlights there. So I'm gonna get a drink of water. I'll be back in a second. Just when I think it's ready for another coat, when the yellow dries, it's not quite giving me the coverage I want in a couple of areas. So the thing to be careful of is a lot of times when you start getting frustrated with not getting coverage, you try to put thicker paint on there, and that's not the answer, because you'll just obscure your details. So just be patient, especially with the yellow paints. Keep applying them. Say that's fairly sufficient. Get down in here real quick. Okay. What I can do while that yellow is finishing is I can start working on some of the facial highlights. I do need to check my reference photo for how bright his skin goes. Alright, cool. So what I'm going to do is I started with tanned flesh. That's going to give me a good base tone. We're going to move up into a little bit of barbaric flesh. So I reset my paint palette after last night. We're going to get some more on my paint palette here and mix the two together. So this is the tanned flesh. This is the barbaric flesh. And then we'll go with roughly a 50-50 mixture of the two. Don't need a whole lot because the skin's a small area. Okay. And work with my masterclass brush here. So we're working on the face. And he's got some very unique facial features, so he's got a nice smirk, which we're going to try to bring out on him. So we'll start with this nose. This is going to be a pretty broad color here. Chin. We'll hit a lot of areas with this. Right here under the eyes. Cheeks. But we're not going to get the bottom of the cheekbones at all. So same thing over on this side. Cheekbones. Jawline. And what we're going to try to get, just the tip is right on the top lip. And around the mouth. So just using the very tip of that brush. Top lip in the mouth. And then the back of the head here too, where it kind of bulges up. And then we'll get the ears. Don't forget the ears, they end up looking weird if you don't highlight them. Alright, so we're going to go and we're going to grab a little more of that Barbarian Flesh. So we're probably, I don't know, leaning more towards a 60-30 blend, or a 60-40, or maybe a 75-25 blend. As my shades get lighter, I'm going to thin them a little bit more, because you don't want to leave brush strokes, so that would be bad. I'm also going to do forehead right above his glasses with this. We can always come back and touch up with our black if we go over. That's okay. Alright. Nose. And then two side pieces of the nostrils. Go and get the ear again while I'm here. But I'm doing slightly smaller area this time, so something to keep in mind there. So we're going to do the upper part of the cheek here. We're going to get the protruding part of the chin. Get the jawline. just the most prominent parts of the cheekbone that time. And then a smaller area of the lip. So we're trying to give him that scowl that he has. Or smirk, or whatever you want to call it. Alright. Probably going to go with the pure Barbarian Flesh now. These Doc Ock arms make it a little bit tough to get into certain areas. Oh, I know what I forgot. I forgot to do the back of his head real quick with this other color. So we'll do that while I'm thinking about it. Slightly smaller area than before. Okay. Yes, I eat my paint every once in a while. Real small areas. Finer lines on the jawline. And you don't have to do as much of this. You do as much of this highlighting and shading as you want on your miniature. And again, like I said, you could have applied a wash to this and just called it a day if you wanted to. And then done a couple highlights. I am trying not to. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with washing shades. I have nothing against them. I use them for certain applications. He looks like he almost has a mustache with how I ended up doing that smirk, but it'll come together. He has a skin-colored mustache right now. And then on the back of the head. Okay. So to go any brighter, what I need is, I need to try to not shake my camera. I apologize for that. Grab the wrong color. I have this color, Alvin Flesh. That's going to be my highest highlight color. And what I may do is actually come back and try to put in some shadows in a couple areas after I finish this one. So, not going to need much at all. And we're going to go ahead and pull some of that right up here into this Barbarian Flesh that we're working with. Just a touch of water, thin it out a little bit. And we're going to do some super small areas here. Tops of the ears, a little reflection on the forehead. Little tiny bit on the cheekbones here, not a whole lot. Just a little tiny bit on the back of his head here. Not much. And then pull in some pure And these are just going to be little tiny highlights. I know it feels like we're doing really small highlights, but with that last one, but these are just going to literally be almost dots. And they're just going to go in some select places. And I am going to go try to darken a couple areas that are not as dark as I would like them to be. So we're going to pull out some fur brown and darken some shades real quick. I'll darken some skin real quick. Why is that blobbing out of there? That was cool. Got a lot more of that than I wanted to on my palette. Alright, so we'll 50-50 mix that and some of the Barbarian Flesh. And the reason I'm doing the fur brown is it's got a nice reddish tone to it for skin tones, so yeah. I'm going to thin this down a little bit more than I would normally because I don't want it to overpower. We're going to do this with some transitions. So by thinning it down a little bit extra, it lets us apply it in gradual amounts. Because I wasn't super happy with the face at all. Where we're at with it, so we will go a little bit darker. Right along the hairline, make it look like that hair's shadowing it. Right, he's got a cleft chin, so we'll add his little cleft in there. He's got a definition on his lip right there. Put this down and we're gonna grab our insane detail brush. This thing's tiny. And we're gonna get that on there. Grab some of that fur brown, and we're gonna try to get his mouth in here. We may need to go just a touch darker for the mouth. Lips area. So got just some pure fur brown for that one. We can come back with our skin tones and clean up some of these areas where we're not super happy with how things have turned out, so that's okay. Darken some of this a little bit. We're gonna add some shade, some of that red-brown color under the back of the head here. Really kind of look like he's got some bulge there on the back of the head behind the ear. And we bring back some of that shadows that we lost a little bit of, so I think he's looking better. Alright, so let's go back and put some of our highlights back in that we lost. Doing that. this upper lip some. Okay. Back into our mix. That's our 50-50 blend of the base tone and the initial highlight of Barbarian Flesh. And I'm thinning it down quite a bit to help with some of the transitions. Then we're gonna go, I'm just gonna jump all the way straight up to Elven Flesh for a very thin highlight right on the lip. Get it just a touch wet so it flows. And I went too much there. That's okay. Right. This mouth is giving me fits. It's really hard to see. The details are real fine on it and soft, so it makes it real hard to paint it when you can't really see the details very well. So we're just kind of working with all these colors together to try to bring out some definition on the mouth. Which is proving more difficult than it should be. Alright, I think that's what we're going to have to call it there. I'm somewhat happy with it. I'm not 100% pleased, but it is what it is. If I were trying to do a display quality piece, I'd go a little bit further with it, but I'm not. Doing just a little bit higher than tabletop, so we'll stick with that. I could spend all night working on this and never get to the greens, so which is an important part because it's kind of the, right now, one of the last major pieces we need to do. I want to do his hair real fast, so we started with the dark stone. If I recall. And we're going to go to an oak brown. Sorry, we're going to go up to a leather brown. So, get some leather brown out. Leave room to mix the two. I'm going to continue working with my Insane Detail brush, but I need to get a 50-50 of these two really quick. Alrighty. Pull my wet palette back to me. Kind of sliding away on me there. Alright. And start pulling out some hair with this highlight color. Right when I think I find a comfortable position to paint him in, my fingers bump one of his arms. If I were to redo this, I would not attach his arms until after I'm done painting him. And I would just paint the arms last and separately. Well, I would paint them last. I'd attach them and paint them. Because this is frustrating every time I bump one. Don't cover up all the hair. You want to leave some of that shadow color that we started with, the dark stone. And don't try to get individual hairs, try to go for clumps of hairs. Alright. I'm not going to jump straight up to the leather brown, I'm going to mix in a little bit more of it. We'll do some more picking out of highlights. He's coming off my base. And pick out select hairs with this. Smaller areas than I did last time. And stick more to the front of the face, like the bangs area. And the top of the head. Again, we're trying to focus our bright colors right near the face. Sometimes if the ridges are designed well enough, you can run your brush sideways along the hair and it'll pick out ridges, as long as it's not too wet of a brush. Alright, pure leather brown. And add just a touch of water to that. A little bit too much on there, so we'll touch it off with my finger. Alright. Got a couple back here real fast, nothing too fancy on the back. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of that moon dust and I'm going to mix it in to desaturate it a little bit. And that'll give us a nice reflective tone. I'm just going to apply that in select areas. Okay. I did get some leather brown into some areas where I'm not super happy, so I'm going to go back and shadow some things. Just to bring back some of that detail. Alrighty. There's one more spot I want to bring it back again. Much better. Alright, grab my black that I used earlier in yesterday's paint stream. And let's touch up my glasses where I got some skin tone on there. Super careful doing that because you don't want to go down on the cheeks that you work so hard to lock in and highlight. Alright. Now, what I'm going to do is grab a little Spaceship Exterior and we're going to try to put a little bit of a lens color on the, or a lens reflection on the glasses. Spaceship Exterior is my go-to white. Good lord, why are my paints doing that? I've not had them do that before. That's a little irritating. They're all squirting out as soon as they open them. Not something I've experienced. So that dark spot you see under my wet palette is I accidentally poked a hole in my one of my sheets of paper, and some of my black soaked through under there. So I'm going to want this paint to be fairly thick. And I actually, believe it or not, have one brush that's smaller than this. And I'm going to grab it. It is called the Psycho. And I don't even know if I can get the brush in focus on the string, so we're going to grab that. Typically I don't work with brushes this small, so I'm going to try to put a couple of streaks on the eye. You have to work real quick with this brush because it dries on the brush real fast. Get some lens reflections in there. Alright, done with that brush. We're going to add mix some of this black and some of the Spaceship Exterior together to make a very light gray. Or a very dark gray, I mean. I'm going to do some quick highlighting on our glasses here. A couple of spots, just put some reflections on the frame. Don't go too overboard with it. Just want to give them some color, so they're not just black splotches. Alright, so the other thing I'm going to do is grab some of this leather brown, and I'm going to fix a couple of these fingers here that I got some yellow in places I didn't want yellow. I know I'm doing that off stream. I was trying to get a good overhead view of what I was doing, so. Okay. The other one I want to do is right here on the wrist. I lost some of my definition there. And water blobbed everything again. Unintentionally. Alright, try that again. Thin it out just a touch. almost like washing it, but we're not. We're glazing. There we go. And then I want to try to define out some of these other fingers that I accidentally blobbed up. I may need to go to a smaller brush for that, or a finer tip brush, I mean. We'll see. I'm using the insane detail already for this, so it should be fine enough. There we go. I'm trying to finish these up so that I can be done with the yellow areas and focus back on the green. So just going back in and putting in some of my browns, or putting some of my browns back in. Some thinned out brown paint. All right. Time to do our upper body yellows. As I knock everything over. I'm extra clumsy tonight. But that's alright. Alright. Into our 50-50 Moondust and Daemonic Yellow mix. And we're going to start getting some of our highlights in here on these upper arms. Once we get to it, the green should go fairly rapidly. So we will knock that out pretty quick. And by fairly rapidly, like maybe 30 minutes to an hour. So we're going to try to focus on some of there are ridges on this upper body area. We're going to try to focus on some of that. This collarbone. Ooh, almost touched him in the face because I slipped. Good save. All right. Doesn't look like much yet, but we'll get there. Here's where we're at. Let that dry for a minute. I'm thinking, all right, our two colors that we used on the green, while that yellow's drying, as I'm gonna go ahead and start getting my green ready. We used Greenskin, and we're going to go up to Jungle Green and some of the extreme highlights, so Jungle Green. So here's our Greenskin on our palette. I'm not sure what's going on there. And here's our Jungle Green onto our palette. As always with my streams, if you are having a difficult time keeping up with the colors we're using, I will list them all in the description of this video. So take notes if you want to, but you by no means have to. I feel like my camera's shifted a little bit. Let's get it back to where it should be. Better. Alright. Grab some of this Greenskin. Pull it off to the side. Get the hair off my palette. Grab some of this jungle green. And maybe a 2-to-1 ratio on the Greenskin. I know it's not the same as all the other ones where we went 50-50 and different colors, but we want to work this up some. So this is going to get, most of our green is going to be covered with this, except our deepest recesses. So, and I'm going to leave some area right along these creases that isn't going to get covered with this either. I'm not going to go between the legs with it. And I have thinned it out fairly well. So that it transitions easy. It makes the blending easier with the thinner paint. So what's going to happen with this is you're going to apply it to your miniature and you're going to be like, oh crap, it's really too bright, but when it dries it's going to dry darker than it appears when you first put it on. So don't be afraid to push that just a touch. We're going to do the inside of this calf with it because it's further down. But we're not going to do up in the groin area with it. I have a real bad habit of moving on to other parts of the miniatures before I finish one section, so I'm trying not to do that because I'll have to come back. So I'm working on the front part of the green, and then I'll move over to the back part of the green. So there's little seams on the pants on Doc Ock. Try to leave a little bit of a dark shade next to them. Again, if you mess up, you can come back with the Greenskin and pull it back out, but you don't want to cover it up. Just helps give it some definition. Using, well, I really can't see that under that arm. Using a dark color right next to a light color helps break up areas. And that's one thing that I see a lot of beginning painters do, is they paint their colors right up next to one another. And you want to leave a little bit of a transition zone. For the most part. Of course, this is just my style. Every painter has their own style of painting. Most of them have pretty unique styles, so even some of the, like, what I call pro painters, because I don't consider myself a pro painter. I consider myself a hobbyist that enjoys painting, and I feel like I'm good at it. So, but like the people that enter things like Crystal Brush or awards like that and win, they each have their own style of painting. A lot of the techniques are the same, but how they end up doing their own style is up to them. So I don't have the patience to do that level of competition painting. More power to them. I paint to play. And I want my stuff to look good while I'm playing it. I'm not expecting display quality pieces out of it. So I realized on the other leg after painting this one that I've painted over the seam on accident. So we'll have to go back in there and touch that up a little bit. Ran out of my green mixture, so mix some more up real quick. Okay, and we're going to do our arms now. Too much paint on my brush. And I'm not going to paint the bottom of the arms because I want those to be deep dark shadows. But we'll get all of the biceps and we'll get down the sides and maybe like right up underneath it, like the edge where it starts to curve under, but we're not gonna. We're also going to try to leave this deep elbow crease alone as much as possible. Don't forget the back on him. It would look really awkward if his back weren't shaded to match the rest of him. The other thing you're going to need to remember on this guy is his belly here, because although it's mostly hidden, you'd be amazed at how much light can reflect in certain areas. And what we're trying to do with miniature paint is give the impression that what they would look like if they were full size. So you're trying to trick your brain into viewing the colors on this as if it was a full-size person. The difficulty with miniatures is that light does not impact their size the same as full-size people do. So when you look at a picture of a person, it's real easy to see where lights and shadows and things like that are, because light interacts with it the way that we would expect. But with a miniature, the light does not fall on it the same because of the way light rays bounce. So we have to exaggerate to get that same effect in order to trick your brain into thinking, oh yeah, hey, that's what it should look like. So that's where the art of miniature painting comes in, is being able to say, what would my brain think looks best? Or what somebody else's brain think looks best. So alright. Checking my green transition here. Before I forget, let's go ahead and go back in and put in our dark green along his seam of his pants here. Alright. We're going to let that green dry for a minute, and we're going to go back to our highlight color here. And I'm going to go back to this 50-50 mix because I want to, it's not as dark as I want it to be. So. I'm going to check my reference photo real fast. Okay. Just as I thought. Just wanted to check where some lines and ridges were because they're really soft on my model. And it's not my primer, so I've heard some people say, well, it's because you prime too thick. No, I use one thin coat of airbrush primer, and I've primed a lot of miniatures and not lost any details with it, so they're just some of the details on these minis. These specific Crisis Protocol minis are real soft. that dry while we grab some more of this jungle green, and we're gonna go for roughly a 50-50 blend now. A little bit lighter. Remember, don't be afraid to go lighter than you think it needs to be, because it'll dry darker than what it looks like on your palette or when you initially brush it on. Got too much paint way up close to the ferrule, so I'm going to clean my brush real quick and then pick up some more. Alright. Not happy with that at all. Lick my thumb and take it off. It's too thin. I'm not sure why it's too thin. Much better. Must have found some water on my wet palette and thinned itself up. So we're going to go a smaller area with this. Really focus on the ridges. And those areas that you want to make look like they're standing out a bit. Just like his thigh and knee here. And any area that's kind of upturned a little bit. Don't cover everything though, you want to leave some shadows. I hope y'all are enjoying me being back to streaming as much as I'm enjoying streaming for y'all, because I did miss it. I was using the excuse of I couldn't get a good camera angle to come back to stream. So I finally just bit the bullet and was like, well, you know what? We'll do it. And hopefully y'all will like it. I don't know if it's going to be able to be every day like it has been the last 2 nights, but we will see. I know that I've got a bunch of Star Wars Legion dewbacks I need to strength paint, so I promise those on stream. But to be honest, those are going to be mostly airbrush the dewback itself, so the troopers are going to be essentially my Stormtrooper guide. You can find that on my, I think I did them on stream. Which are essentially the clone troopers as well. So find either of those and you'll have a good idea on how to do the dewbacks while you wait, or the dewback riders. Time to give him a butt definition. So leave a little bit of a dark tone in the middle. It doesn't look natural if they don't have a little bit of definition there. I know Doc Ock's a little chunky. He's a thick model as far as body type goes, but still want to define it a little bit. I get a lot of questions about how thin to thin your paint out, and realistically you need to thin it so that it behaves the way you want it to, and that's a little different for everybody. A lot of it has to do with how you paint, what types of brushes you're using, kind of coverage are you wanting? How much blending are you wanting to do? Using a wet palette, it does tend to require less water added. So that's a plus of a wet palette. Picking out my highlights here. And then most of our other greens should be done to the arms. A little bit smaller area here. Remember, we're trying to keep it a little bit brighter as we go to the face, so really want to draw attention to that upper part of the model. I'm going to keep repeating that throughout my stream because I think it's really important to remember. Alright. Feather out my bicep highlights a little bit. Get that tricep defined. To the other side. I haven't forgot about the back yet. Just haven't got there. If you're out there in stream watching land, feel free to type me some comments in the chat. I would love to talk with you, answer any questions you might have about my process, my opinion on certain things. Only thing I won't openly talk about is religion or politics on here. Or finances. But I don't think most people would ask me about finances. So, alright, I'm going to stick with my green here. I want to get this green knocked out before finishing the top shoulders. And I added some more, and so now we're probably at about a 75-25 of the jungle green blend. Remember, like I said, it's going to dry darker than you think it will. So, but this is going to be some brighter level colors that we're going to do here. And really pick out some of these ridges. This isn't going to cover much area. And for what I said, all of that, don't forget the belly. I forgot the belly on my last highlight, so that's okay. Easy fix. Before we finish this one, we'll go back. I left some of that color right here, and I'm just going to pick out a couple of small areas. I forgot the belly and back. Nothing major. This will probably be the last highlight on the belly area and the back. He's got a couple highlights that extend out of his backpack there. Okay. Alright. Get comfortable again. And back to this green color. off some of my highlights. Being selective on my ridges here with this. And the thighs get a decent treatment of it. Good lord, Doc Ock's arms are obnoxious. Trying to paint around them. I keep bumping my head into my lamp. That's what those sounds are you hear every now and again. The rubbing sounds is me headbutting my lamps. Because I've got everything all pulled in real tight at my paint station so that you guys can see as well as possible. Alright. On the back side of the legs. The upper part of the thighs. This protruding part of the buttock. And feather that in a little bit. Had a little bit too much paint on my brush, so it did some weird stuff. Picking out some fine detail ridges. Side of the thigh here. Some small highlights on the buttock. Or the glute, depends on what you want to call it, I guess. We're going to do one more highlight shade of green after this. We're going to go with some pure jungle green on a couple areas. Some of the more pronounced ridges. Very sparingly with it after this. Biceps and the arms, tip of the elbow here, basically just defining the muscle contours. Side. And just a tiny bit on the back side of the shoulder here. And there's a couple of small ripples that I want to accentuate on his back. Nothing too fancy. Alright. And then into our pure jungle green for what I think is going to be our last color. We shall see. And we're just going to pick out some very extreme highlights here. It's going to look way out of place when you do this real quick, but it's going to dry darker, I promise. But remember, we're trying to do some contrasting work here, so Make sure you're ready for that commitment. I promise it will look good once it's done, once it dries. And these are just tiny little highlights that I'm adding. Nothing too dramatic. You don't want to go too big with this, because it will make it look bad. Unless that's the color you're going for. I mean, obviously, if you're going for this color of green, then slather it on. I am not. Get the ridges. I guess I'd focus on your larger ridges, your points that stick out, because the clothing does have points in some areas, and I just flubbed and hulked my brush into the model on accident. Hulk smash. I told you the green would take us less than an hour once we started it. We're getting towards the end of this mini. I'm real happy with where he's turning out. We've got some good contrast going on here. What I'll probably do here in a second is set him aside real quick and show you how I do their bases. It's super simple, but is really a striking effect. But it really is kind of hobby cheating the way I do it. So nothing too fancy there. A lot of dry brushing, and I do wash the bases slightly. I use a wash in the recesses only, so I do some thin washing on them. And I'm going out and picking some areas out that I think need to have this highlight on the legs. So this highlight tone. And then I'm trying to blend a couple of colors together also, where I've got some transitions that I wasn't exactly happy with. Alright, on to the upper arm, or upper body. Remember, try to push your highlights up to the brightest areas. Try to visualize where light would fall. Where you think you might see a lot of good shadows and highlights. So for the upper body, I am going to go grab a little bit of this 50-50 mix of the yellow, and I'm going to mix it 50-50 with, or probably 75-25 with some of this jungle green, because I want to go just a bit of a slight higher highlight on some of the biceps. Remember, we're going to try to be a little bit brighter as we get up towards his face. So, and what that also is going to do is help tie in some of these other colors that are up here. So like the yellow we already have going on. doesn't take much. I'm not sure if you can see that very well, but I will take pictures and get them posted on the page once we're done. I do want to touch up some of this, add a little bit of this green to the shoulders as it comes around. Not much. Alright, are we ready for it? We're going to go into our bright moon dust here for our yellow highlights up by the face. Thin it out some. Headbutt my lamp again. Brandon, you still here? These stock hawk arms really make working up around the head area difficult. I need to clean my brush real fast. Find my brush cleaner. I'm getting some paint down around the ferrule. So I use a Gentastics Drunken Brush Goop. It works well for me. Paint's been slowly wicking up into the ferrule area. So I just get a little bit of paint soap on there and swirl it around on my hand without folding the brushes over too bad. And it typically pulls it out. I can see a slight green tinge to the soap, so it's coming out. As well as some dried flakes coming out there. Alright. That's cleaned. And back into that yellow. I just ran my brush into. A little bit of exhaustion starting to set in, but I want to get this guy done before tomorrow. I don't want to have to do another stream on this guy. Not because I don't like streaming for y'all, but I want to move on to some other things, so I'm just not happy with this chest area at all. It's just not coming out the way I want it to. I may have to go back in and add in some brown recessed shadows in a minute once it dries, because I'm just not getting much definition out of this upper area here. So, the other thing I want to do is I'm going to take this jungle green while my yellow dries, and I'm going to get it fairly thick, and I'm going to go paint my seams of my pants, of his pants here. I'm going to try to paint them green. So, using the side of my brush with some thick paint on it, should be able to pull it out like that. does tend to work well with the side of a brush. And like I said, if you flub off to the side or something, don't feel that you can touch it up with that dark green. That's why we leave that little bit of dark green along the inside. We're just waiting on that yellow to dry anyways. So once the yellow dries, I am going to wash just the metallics, but that'll be the only parts that we wash on this physical miniature itself. Because there's just not a whole lot of point in trying to highlight metallics when you're using true metal paints. So I'm not going to do that. There's not an effective use of my time. Something real quick. I guess the upper body's starting to look a little bit better. A little bit. Still not entirely happy with it, but a little bit for that chest area. And so for that final highlight, I'm going to take some of my Spaceship Exterior and I'm going to desaturate out some of this yellow. And we'll hit some fine highlights on this yellow up top. I'm just not super happy with this area. The details, part of it's the details are just really not well defined on the ridge there. Part of it, so it makes it real tough to try to paint within the lines, if you catch what I'm trying to say there. All right. Now that's done. I'm going to thin down some of this brown into that glaze consistency I was using before, and I'm going to bring out some of these edges again. Like I said, this is a thin down brown. I'm just going around all the ridges, trying to bring back some definition to them. Almost a glaze consistency. And feather it out up to the chest area. While this isn't a wash, it will help to hide some of the imperfections if you're got some unevenness or had some difficulty with some of your lines and stuff. So it's kind of a glaze. It also kind of gives it a little bit of a cel-shaded look, so it again. Yeah, he's got some ridges on there. So those Doc Ock arms make it real tough sometimes. Alright, let's try this again with some of those highlights. Just bring some of those colors back into line. It's the browns that I flubbed up because I bumped into the darn Doc Ock arm. As I was trying to get a straight line, my brush contacted the Doc Ock arm and slammed off to the side, so fun times. Yay. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, I'm not completely thrilled with it, but it's better than it was. Okay. Touch this one up just a little bit. That one again. Okay. Far from perfect, but it works for me. I got a couple highlights here on the collar. Do the same thing on the back of the neck. Okay. And the last step is going to be to take this super desaturated white and pick out the ridges of his outfit without coloring over it. Nope, not the supers, I meant the moon dust. Grabbed the wrong paint color. Make sure not to cover all the brown up that we just went and painstakingly re-added. When I'm concentrating deep like this, I talk less. Alright. Fix the highlight flub. Cover up some brown in this shoulder pad because it's just too big. Alright, I think we're ready to put a wash on the metallics. Just checking how things look. I think I want to bring this little highlight around a little bit. Pick up some more color on his back real fast with some of the darker gray. Pick out some of the rolls that he's got going on his back here. little bit lighter green. And really accentuate some of that a little bit. Just to bring a little more interest from the rear of the model there. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to grab I have a GP palette that I use for washes. I don't put my washes on a wet palette. They just run everywhere. So, Army Painter Dark Tone. My old worn out regiment brush is also my wash brush, because I abuse my wash brushes. So, grab some of that, and we're going to brush this on all of our metallics. Just because the metallics, like I said, highlighting them is pointless. Now what we are going to do with these guys, once the wash dries, is we're going to come back and put some color into the center of the arms, like it was his laser beams. So he shoots lasers out of his arms, or his tentacles, or whatever they called. So when you're doing it on the body, be very careful. You don't want to get it onto anywhere but the metallics. It will look very out of place if it gets onto some of the other area. And we're going to do the same on his back once the wash dries. But while that wash dries, we'll do the base together on string so that you can see how I do my basing for these guys. I think it looks good. Got too much wash in some areas, so we'll pick it back out. Alright. Like I said, not washing the metallics is pointless. I know I said no washes. I forgot about the metallics. Careful of your wash pooling places that you don't want it to. As always, I assume most people have used a wash before. If not, they really are a good tool for your toolbox, and there is a time and place for them where they're useful. I do like the Army Painter tones when it comes to washes. They've just always worked better for me than the GW stuff. Not that the GW stuff is bad. The Army Painter stuff's also cheaper, which I like to do things as inexpensively as possible, and maybe cheap's not the word. They're less expensive, but I feel like they're very comparable in my experience, and I have used the other competitors' stuff, so very. Right. And the last arm. Keeps trying to slide off his poster tack there. No escaping yet, Doc Ock. Almost done with the wash on the metallics. Trying to pick off some of the wash off of some of the higher areas so that I don't have to go back and clean up as much later. All right. There we are. We're going to give that a moment to dry. Set him right over there. And we're going to work on his base, which this is the base we're using. It's already been primed, and the gray that I'm using is almost a perfect match for uniform gray. So if you needed to paint it, you could do uniform gray. The brand of primer that I use is almost a perfect match for that. So I don't have to necessarily try to reinvent the wheel by repainting it. I'm re-wetting the corners of my wet palette here. I'm going to go ahead and cover it for a minute since we're setting that aside. So let it sit and stop drying out a little bit. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take my cheapy palette, and I've got this metallic color here that I like for the manholes. It is Army Painter Rough Iron. I'm going to put some of that on that cheap palette. I'm going to get my brush. Normally I put it on my wet palette, but I don't feel like dinking with it right now. Put it down just a touch, and we're going to paint this manhole cover. Definitely needs some more water in it. This one metallic specifically is real thick, so make sure you water it down well. I do like the color though. And so what we'll do is we'll paint the manhole cover this color. We're going to apply some dark tone wash to the cracks and crevices. Forgot we gotta paint the storm drain. I haven't had this base yet, so this is the first one I've done of this style, which is cool. The miniatures in this come with, the bases are randomized, so you never know exactly which sets of bases you're going to get for your miniatures. I didn't end up getting a couple of, or I didn't get bases that I didn't want, so there's some of these bases that come with these miniatures that have, it looks like rails in them, like for a railroad or something, and that's just not fitting of my style. So I'm glad I did not end up getting any of those, because it's not what I would have wanted. So get my edges in there. Ever so carefully get the outside of it. And same thing on the other side. circles from the other direction is a little bit tougher for me. So what you'll find as you practice some painting is you'll find that you can do some brush strokes one direction and can't do them in a different direction. So, yeah, like I accidentally got a little bit of the metallic paint on the edge there, but that's okay. Alright, and we're going to use Gunmetal for the Storm Drain, just for some color contrast. Don't need a whole lot. Brush that along the tops. You don't need to worry about getting down inside because we're going to apply a wash pretty heavily to that area and it'll end up turning black. So just want to get the ridges and this top piece up here. So what these will do is it'll be a wash, a very heavy dry brush, and it'll be done. That's how I do my bases. Makes it nice and simple, easy. And they turn out well, I think. All right. Missed a spot. Ta-da. Okay. Here's how Doc Ock is so far. Probably hard to see with that behind it. Got some paint on my new mat. Not happy about that. Sorry about the shake trying to brush it off. I think he's looking really good. I'm really happy with Doc Ock. Where he's turned out so far. So what we need to do is now pull this off and need to get just a little bit of lava orange, I think. No, we're not going to use lava orange. We're just going to stick with our yellows that we've been using, I think. Yep. Let's just stick with our... No, you know what? I am going to go with a little bit of the lava orange, I think. Hard decision. Put a little lava orange right there on my palette as it decides to start blobbing out. Grab some of that. And we're going to put a dot right in the middle of each of these arms. And give it a laser beam look. Now, these other guys are a little bit tricky, so I'm going to get a finer brush. And try to squeeze it in there. Without, preferably, getting on my metallics. Good enough for what I'm trying to accomplish. Same thing there, you can't really see them, so if you just need to get some color in there. Alright, and then on my reference photo, alright, so So he's got a little plus right there. Get this center here. Oh, my wash isn't completely dry in there. That's okay. Get that center there. There, making a plus mark on his back, and right there. And go and clean up some of my edges where I overshot some. Get my brush wet and do that. Alright. Then I'm going to take some of my yellow. And the highest color we'll probably go to is this Demon Yellow. And we're gonna blend it a little bit in the middle. Need to thin it, it's starting to dry on my palette just a touch. Okay, we're not going to do this to the top two because you can't see them. To be, so clean some of it up real fast. There we go. On the back, blend it in just a touch. We'll probably have to wait for that to dry a little bit more before we do anything else, so we'll set Doc Ock to the side for a second while we work on his base some. Some of this metallic was a little bit thin, so get that cleaned up. And then get some more of our dark tone wash here. Just need a couple drops. Grab my detail brush, and what I'm going to do is end up running it through the seams or all of the cracks. So it's kind of just pin lining, I guess it's called, or line washing, pin washing, I don't know. You could probably use panel liner for this. I just use black wash or dark tone. If you get a little bit over the edge, that's fine, because we're going to end up washing it anyway, or dry brushing it anyways. I'm going to go along all of these metallics also, just to give them some edge definition around the outside. Really make them kind of pop out from there, from the sidewalk. Bump my head into my lamp again. My brain's starting to go, it's bedtime, but I want to finish this. My local comic book store is doing demos for this game tomorrow, and I told them I would bring my fully painted core set, I was hoping to get some more of the train done before tomorrow, but that's not happening. Doc Ock took just a hair longer than I expected him to. Really because I was trying to show you all my process for it. I'm just applying my wash real quick on there. Alright. Dry it off a little bit and get some water. We just smell it. Alright. I'm back. Let's see how we're drying here on the back of Doc Ock. Didn't need to get that much paint. Alright. Better. Just need to get some yellow color into these orange spots. You don't want to cover all of it. But you want to give the impression of light emanating as if it's a generator or something. And the center one, and I'm going to go all the way up to the bright light. Grab this finer point brush for a couple of these. Same thing on these ones up front because I really want to make them pop. There we go. Alright. The Doc Ock miniature himself is pretty much done. Might do just a couple of brighter green tone highlights here on the upper arms because they're not quite as bright as I would like them to be. Really kind of give him some definition. Come up here like he's got some really extreme contrast. Remember, we're trying to be bold with our contrasts here, so don't be afraid to push it a little bit further than you would normally without going overboard. Get a couple of these highlights down onto his leg and just a couple of areas just to tie it in a little bit, so mostly on the sides of the legs here. Yeah, happier with that. Real small, subtle highlights. So one of my downfalls is I have a hard time stopping before I mess something up. So I'm going to call this miniature himself done. What I will do for the rest of this base, I'm going to show you real quick the process, but I probably won't finish the whole thing. I have a ratty old brush that I am going to get some ash gray. If this is dry, yeah. You know what I did forget to do is wash this middle. So let me fix that real quick before I forget. But I can do my dry brushing without that being dry yet, so no big deal. This really dulls down the gunmetal and makes it look worn and faded and dirty. So make sure you do that. Alright. So I'm going to take some of this ash gray. We're going to squeeze some of it out on my wet palette. That's a lot, but okay. Not wet palette, on my dry palette. I don't do dry brushing off of my wet palette either because I want the paint to be thick. And what's going to happen, sorry about the shaking, but I really have to get the paint off here. What's going to happen is you can see this is where I started. I've gotten to where I'm got most of the paint, nothing's really coming off when I brush it on there. And this is why I don't want to do too much of the dry brushing on stream because it shakes my camera. And then we're going to press hard and just rub in one direction. And turn our brush every once in a while. Maybe a little bit more. And dry brush. And we'll get up here. Go in one direction with it. And I'm going to end up doing all 4 directions with it, so I just focus on one direction. And I'm not rubbing, I said I'm rubbing hard, but I'm not pushing hard enough to like rip paint off or anything. But what I am doing is trying to get it, I want it to look streaky. And it's going to look not super streaky, but like, it's hard to explain. But I want it to look worn. And the way to do that is to dry brush the tar out of it. And if you pick up some of that wash that's not perfectly dry, that's fine too. So go another direction. Dry brush, dry brush, dry brush. And it's going to help cover up some of your lines also. So we're mostly done there. Next up, I'm going to grab a little bit of this Spaceship Exterior so I don't waste it off my palette. And without cleaning my brush, I'm just going to rub some of that off. And we'll come back over it with Spaceship Exterior. And that's going to be one step lighter, and that's as bright as I'm going to go with it. And that's going to give you some really good definition on your base. So, dry brushing. I'll do the same thing on the manhole cover with, I'll use just a very slight amount of gunmetal to dry brush it. That way it pops a little bit. So, really want to bring the Spaceship Exterior onto the edges of stuff. So, that's what it ends up looking like. Real simple way to get really good bases, or good looking concrete bases. And if it's not dry brushed perfectly even, that's actually better, because it helps sell the effect of worn concrete, because concrete wears unevenly. So there's that. We're gonna go ahead and call the stream there for tonight. What'll happen is I'll finish this up once I'm waiting for the wash to dry on the metallics. Once that does, I'll dry brush this. I'll dry brush the grate. I may paint up like one of the little bits that come with it, like a bottle or something, stick it on there somewhere. I will black line the outer rim, just I use a craft paint and a cheapy old brush and run it around the edge. It will glue Doc Ock on, and I will spray them with my matte varnish, and that will finish the miniature. So what I'll do is I'll finish this up, and then I'll finish these two together, and then I will post pictures on my Facebook page. So appreciate you stopping by with me. I hope this was super helpful for you and helped you get over any fears, doubts, hesitations you may have had in painting this miniature or getting started on your... Sorry, I think my stream cut for a second there. What I was saying is I hope that the Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff, this helps you get over any fears or doubts or hesitations you may have of painting it. It's a ton of fun to paint. I really had a blast doing it. This is the last miniature I have, although my Iron Man may be getting a dunk and some paint stripper and getting a repaint, because I'm not entirely thrilled with how my Iron Man turned out. But for now, everything that I have, minus the train, is all painted, and it is ready to go. Thanks y'all for hanging out with me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next stream. So here is my outro. Have a good night. Show your appreciation by hitting the like button. You can subscribe by hitting the logo in the center of their screen to see all the new stuff as it comes out. Find me on social media at xxnerferderxx for Twitter, Facebook, Jagged Brush Studios. To see the next video, hit the video on the left. To see the newest upload, hit the video on the right. And I hope you enjoyed. Get out there and paint some more. Logo in the center of their screen to see all the new stuff as it comes out. Find me on